welcome to Doctor Who review. I would normally say in 20, but let's be honest. This episode is not going to be 20 minutes long. What we're going to try and do to create the facade that we've managed our sort of format for this season is we will talk about the episode and try to keep the actual just sort of general review of the episode to 20 minutes. But I know for a fact that whether I end up splitting this into two or not, I'm not sure. But like, we're definitely going to talk for longer. There's a lot of stuff to cover. The wider context of what's happened for the show, the obvious lies being told.
This is a 20-minute Doctor Who review podcast where we have uploaded an episode that was 50 minutes, so I don't think we need the pretense of splitting it.
Yeah.
Why make them wait? Let's just strap them together.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, look, there's a lot to discuss, and I think a lot of that discussion is going to be around this weird need to lie about something we already know isn't true. I guess it's worked to some degree. There are people who genuinely don't believe that reshoots occurred, that this was always the plan, and I guess that is mission successful. If you create enough doubt, you give them enough things to point to and say, look, the cast and crew said this was always the plan, I guess you win the sort of information war there, even though we absolutely know this was reshoots done in February. I think I could even tell you which scenes were reshoots, but we'll talk about that. So let's start with reviewing the episode. I've got the timer on screen. I'm gonna hit go, and I'm gonna hand over to Chris for overall thoughts, if that's all right with you, Chris. I'm preparing you this time.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, all right. So the timer is about to start. Oh no, it didn't. Wait, now. What? 20 minutes on the clock. Let's go.
It's hard. We going?
Yeah. We're going.
It's hard for me. You know what? Everything, as Dan will attest by my grumpy, I think is the best word for them. Grumpy voice notes over after the episode. Everything, my entire review of this episode is shrouded by being gutted that Ncuti's gone.
Yep.
And actually, you know what? Because chances are Millie and I can never say her name.
Varada Sathi.
Varada, sorry, remember her name, Varadas. And being gutted that Millie and Varada are gone as well.
Yeah.
Because they're probably gone. I love Ncuti's Doctor. I think he's been brilliant, a breath of fresh air. We've done truly different stories, like Dot and Bubble, like the story in the engine. And I know people are going, this is about the season, not the episode, Chris. Yes, but my feelings on the episode are shrouded by a grouchiness that there wasn't some big trick being played or whatever, and and also, as we'll probably point to later, I'll just say it. There's, he mentioned filming series 3, and the plan was to film series 3.
Oh, you've gone straight into big stuff, man. Review the episode. We got 20 minutes.
I know. But I'm just okay. We'll talk about that later. But I'm just saying that shrouds my view of the episode.
Yeah, but it's I thought the whole point was we were going to separate those two bits. I agree that is going to affect it. Review the episode, man. There's 18 minutes.
You want
left.
Honesty, Dan. You want an honest reaction, and I'm giving you an honest reaction. Okay. If you want a more structured review, go listen to a better podcaster. Look. I thought there were some good ideas. I thought, in particular, this is full spoilers, obviously. In particular, the idea of Ruby's character reacting and being the one that remembered Poppy, and the connections between, that and her as a foundling. I thought was really well executed. The scene where they were passing the jacket back and forth and the jacket was slowly disappearing and they were slowly forgetting, I thought was incredibly effective. And I was like, it's the most in years I've ever been like, whoa, about, a scene in Doctor Who. So I think there were a number of good ideas and good performances throughout. I think it was undeniably exciting. I really agree with my friend Adam. We're going to get him on a podcast one day. He posted a picture of Doctor Who, and he said that finale was wild. And then it was a meme from Knives Out, and it had Daniel Craig's character. It was a split screen, and one half said, "It doesn't make any goddamn sense," and then the other half said, "Compels me though." I think that's a very good summary of this episode. There was a lot that was very compelling. It was definitely edge of your seat stuff. But I didn't like the way a lot of the ideas were executed. In particular, a lot of stuff in the first 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Omega was a big CGI head. Don't know why Dan's moaning at me. By his own rules, we shouldn't even be doing a fucking podcast on this episode. Because he said last week we wouldn't if Omega turned out to be a big CGI head.
I said if it was a big CGI
Omega
monster, I'd never record a Doctor Who podcast again.
Yep. And now I'm getting shit for the structure of my feelings. I think,
No, the structure of your review. We have time to moan about the bigger stuff. We only have 15 minutes left.
Only 20 minutes. Only 20 minutes for that too. Not sure it's enough. I thought Omega being a big CGI monster that doesn't even make it out the portal. I think it's really amusing. Crispy Pro pointed this out. That I believe the sonic screwdriver got redesigned because RTD thought it looked too much like a gun, and then basically has Shooty using a blaster cannon
the equivalent to an automatic weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, to destroy sort of Omega, just shove him back in. Like literally, that's what happened, guys. The big villain we were leading up to last episode came out a door and then he got pushed back in. Rani got eaten. That's insane. What a joke. Mrs. Flood's reappearances everywhere throughout the Doctor's timeline this series got explained, but not her talking to the camera, which for me is the much more intriguing mystery. And the thing I would have liked to have maybe explored more. But hey, maybe she'll come back because Anita Dobson lives. I think the other actress, whose name I can't remember at this precise moment, was absolutely wasted. She was genuinely really good in the role, and she got eaten by Omega. Although I have to say, I did enjoy the two Rani's joke. I know I shouldn't, but I thought that was quite funny. I thought Jodie's Whittaker scene was really nice. I loved the Yaz line. I thought it was absolutely necessary, and I'm really glad it was put in. So I enjoyed that. So there were scenes I enjoyed and would go back and have gone back and rewatched. Not many from the first 45 minutes, has to be said. It clearly is, Dan's done a lot of thinking about this, so we'll talk to this later. But clearly, a lot of stuff has been tacked on, and as a whole, I therefore feel like it's a bit of a hot mess. There you go, Dan. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there is elements. There's no way to avoid that this episode is a mess. I will say though, on balance, the fact that the main story leads into the regeneration stuff as smoothly as it does, considering what we know, is kind of a miracle. And the last sort of 20 minutes of this episode, are actually some of the most compelling, and they shouldn't be. This was, from what we can tell, last minute stuff added. This is stuff that was written with way less time and preparation, and yet it blends into the rest of the episode perfectly and is the most entertaining stuff of the episode. Look, if we're doing the good and the bad, look, on the bad side, there are too many dangling threads. That I once spoke to a publisher who said when you hand in a book as an author, they expect sort of a certain percentage of the plot threads in that book to be resolved within that book. They'll only let you leave such an amount uncovered because they know that at a certain point you will have an unsatisfying book if it's too open ended, and I think there's a truth to that here, where not enough. There were just a few too many loose threads for it to be completely satisfying. We'll talk about what those are in a minute, but because there's some of those are more like wide series stuff. There was a lack of clarity. On top of that, there was lack of clarity on the things we did end. They didn't do enough with the Rani. Her death was kind of ridiculous. We didn't do enough with Omega. The solution to him was kind of ridiculous. It just felt like there was a point when it was like, oh, we stopped the villain now because we need to do other stuff, and then it happened. If this episode had ended there, or as it originally was intended, shortly thereafter, this would be as bad, if not worse, than last year's Empire of Death, in my opinion. But the episode is massively saved by a lot of the ideas that follow it. I'm going to read my good list very quickly. I'll go through my good list very quickly, and you'll see that a lot of this is from the end of the episode. So I loved the notion that Poppy Well, okay, the idea that Poppy was there the entire time, that's from the original ending, and it's brilliant. The idea that she was that Belle was trying to get back to Poppy this entire time is incredible, and there's some confusion around that point. Some people have misinterpreted the episode as that the dream world created Poppy, and now that is the reality of it. But the Doctor literally says, "You were always coming home for Poppy," and the Populous universe is the one that he's like, it's just a bit wrong. It's 1 degree off. Magenta isn't right anymore. We established that's the wrong universe. That's not the correct one. So I don't know why people have misinterpreted that way. Well, actually, no, I do. The writing is scattered. The way these things are explained is poorly, actually. So, you know what? I take that back. Every time I see one of those posts, or the more I see one of those posts where people just completely misunderstood this episode, I think it's really like offensive that like this show ended up like the Doctor ended up just giving someone a child they didn't want. What are you talking about? What episode didn't you watch? Wait, no, Russell didn't make it clear. Fair enough. On your way. Anyway, but yeah, I love that idea that she was always supposed to be there. I love that she vanishes. I love the Ruby stuff that she knows. The regeneration, the idea that he didn't do it alone. I think I saw a face in the nebula. I wonder if that was Nicola Coughlin's face. I thought I saw like eyes in the shapes of the stars and stuff. I was very interested in that. I needed to go back to it. I never got a chance. I loved the 13th Doctor and her inclusion in this. I thought that was genius. We talked about this for a while, but I've been a big proponent of this. This Doctor came in ushered by another Doctor. I loved the idea that there'd be another Doctor showing up to see him out, and when we went through the list of Doctors that could be, it really was, you know, it was either Smith or Jodie. So here we are, brilliant, and they use that to resolve some stuff from her era, which is amazing. In terms of stuff that was in the normal part of the episode that I liked, I did actually like the conclusion for Conrad's story. I thought that was really, really good. I loved that we got everyone at unit back except for Lenny Rush, who I presume that was just a scheduling I assume that was a scheduling issue, but it is a shame because it does kind of feel like, oh, the Doctor's friends are back. No one is missing. No one at all.
You've got to assume he was filming the second series of Am I Being Unreasonable or something.
Yeah, 100%. But it you know, it does raise that. It raises the question, doesn't it? It's like it's sort of like, I guess he wasn't the Doctor's friend. You know what I mean? Like, it's not intentional, but it is what it is. There was a funny thing in I know we don't have time. This very quickly. There's a funny thing in Dragon Ball where someone did a wish to turn all of Goku's friends into children, and then later on in the series, he goes and meets his friend Korin, who is full sized, and I'm like, I guess they're not friends because if they were friends,
no, fuck that. I'm not having a bollocking for tangenting on Doctor Who.
You weren't tangenting. You were doing the thing we have a time for. We have time dedicated for afterwards. It's not the same.
Well, we don't have time. We don't have time for Dragon Ball Z nostalgia, do we? So stay on track and review the episode.
It is context. But yeah, no. So I think, you know, Lenny being missing is a shame. But you know, it is. I assume, as Chris pointed out, probably just busy. But I really loved all the Anita stuff. I think so genius to bring back a character like Anita in this way. But yeah, too much stuff left dangling, in my opinion. I think on the whole, the first 45 minutes are really messy. There's a lot of just very convenient, we solve the problem. And there's a lot of like Russell chaos, which I hate. Like Russell just like, oh, wouldn't it be so much fun to see the Doctor on a bike flying through the sky? And it's like, no, that doesn't do anything for anyone. It's meaningless. This is just meaningless. Oh, what if the unit tower turned around and shot at stuff? No, Russell. No, you've misunderstood the assignment here. Give me an ending to my story. Don't just contrive some lasers. I don't need lasers. I need a satisfying conclusion to the storyline you've been telling. Don't waste 10 minutes of the episode on needless visual spectacle with no threat. You don't feel any threat in any of that stuff, Russell. Stop it. Bad Russell. I feel like hitting him with a rolled up newspaper. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of overall stuff. Well, I don't know. Do you want anything you want to jump on from the ramble I just gave?
But this is the problem with the episode. It's so messy that it's like, it's insane that within that there's bits we've not even, like, between us, we've not even mentioned. Like Anita going into past Doctors' lives and like getting a glimpse, like she walks into John Pertwee and like a Dalek comes out, like I like just madness.
Yeah, can I ask you a quick question actually on that point? Anita confused me slightly because I maybe I'm misremembering, or maybe I misunderstood at the time. Was her thing with the Doctor sort of played slightly romantic in the original? Because there's a bit here where she's like, I looked for you for ages. I saw all these other versions of the Doctor, and then I finally saw you. When she finally sees him, he's with Rogue, and then she looks sad and leaves. And I'm like, oh, is that always supposed to be romantic? Their thing. I just think I haven't seen it that way. Did the episode originally cover that? The Christmas one?
Maybe on her side. I can't really remember because for me, Joy to the World was so mad as an episode. There was like a really great sketch in the middle of it involving the Doctor and Anita, and then just this insanity around everything else and a convoluted mess. But yeah, so I'll be honest with you. It took me, I'm ashamed to say, it took me a second to realise who she was. So I can't remember.
Yeah. Someone in the comments can fill me in, because I watched that episode at Christmas, like everyone else, but it didn't, like, I'm either misremembering or, as is typical of me, missed the romantic connotation.
I wish, it's a shame there wasn't time to do something better with Conrad's arc. I think it's a shame that he's now, I'm not pleased, it's nice that he's happy, but maybe, like, Ruby manages to talk him round a little bit in that scene, or she just, like, do you know what I mean? They have a conversation, and the conversation helps, rather than the only way to destroy that sort of attitude is to wish it away. I wish there was more time to do something a bit more substantial.
Well, yes, but I think the tricky thing there is what they did with Ruby was they because that's not my read of what happens. My read is that she was bigger than it. Like, she went in there with, Doctor, can I hurt him? Can I, like, as a joke, like, am I allowed to punch him? Is that one of the ways in which I can persuade him? And what she did in the end was she sort of turned the other cheek, so to speak. She had the chance to do him damage. She had the baby. She had the ability to basically wish him the sort of miserable death the Doctor wished upon him earlier in the season, and she was the bigger man. She was arguably better than the Doctor. The Doctor was like, you're going to die alone in a jail, and that's good, and I like that. And Ruby was like, Ruby, the consummate humanitarian, saw the humanity in him and just thought, you're like this because the source of your problem is you're angry, you're miserable for whatever reason, and it's been misguided, it's been put into the wrong things. If I wish you to be happy, because I think maybe you'll be a better person like that. But maybe even take that as end part off. I just wish you to be happy. Everyone should be happy. And with that, the side effect is that a happier Conrad is a less bigoted Conrad, which is like, I guess, yeah. I don't know. It's not perfect. It's rushed like everything else in this episode, and out of nowhere in some ways. But it's sort of like, again, like the core idea at the heart of it is, even if the construction is a bit wobbly, is good, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, and that's been a theme of both our reviews, and I think Rose is another good example of that. The core idea of her appearance, and Conrad could never have imagined something as beautiful as you, is really nice. But I just feel bad that Yasmin Finney for a second year in a row is like, turn up, spend a day chilling in unit, think about in unit for a day.
I love
Don't
that
really
so
do anything.
much. I will say, of all the non-subtle stuff we complained about last week, all of the, oh, Doctor, you can't like another man because that's bad and all that stuff. And, oh, disabled people, bleh, we throw them into a camp. All of that stuff, which was just on the nose as hell, I loved. Of course you weren't here. He couldn't see you. Like, that level of dismissal is... Oh, that was good. That's what we needed last week. That level of cleverness in the writing, because that was missing very much in Wishworld. So yeah,
and would be even more powerful if there was the time for Rose to then go on and do amazing things in that scene.
Right. Yeah.
There just isn't, and I don't know. But it's just less ideas, I suppose. I mean, you can't expand on all of these ideas. There's too many. It would have been a 3-hour finale.
Yeah.
Maybe we dick around in Wishworld less. And maybe that's how you do it.
Maybe I predicted we'd say that last week. Maybe that isn't what we should have done. But I will say, like, I think, look, for me, like, this episode is significantly better than Wishworld, for a number of reasons, and a lot better than Empire of Death. If we're sort of as we're hitting like 2 minutes left, just to round this out, I think it is a messy episode, but the ideas are quite strong, and I found it deeply entertaining. I was really hooked. I was really gripped throughout. Even when it wasn't quite working, I was gripped. Maybe for the wrong reasons. Like, you know, when the big CGI Omega eats the Rani, I was kind of like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like, but I was gripped. And then obviously from that point onwards, it was just like the most compelling television. The Poppy vanishing slowly, and the folding of the jacket until it just disappeared, and then the cart, like, was all so brilliantly done. They took the time to have Ruby really convince the Doctor. I feel like if this had been a later draft, like if Russell had the time to redraft it into Oblivion and shorten it, this finale, it would have been, Doctor, do you not remember Poppy? No. But you should. Okay, I do. You know what I mean? Like, it would have been boiled down into just nothingness, the same sort of gibberish we get the rest of the time with Russell's scripts. But instead, he wrote it quickly. He didn't have the time to do that, and we got this really compelling scene where she really did have to convince him, and you believe that she did. So I on the whole loved it, and the regeneration is just bananas. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, that's where I stand. How about you, Chris? What's your overall thoughts?
Similar. I don't come away as positive. Because it was just so messy for me, and I'm just gutted about Ncuti leaving. But I think there was definitely a number of compelling and good ideas in. I would agree it's better than last year's finale. I would agree that there are moments I would be excited to rewatch. But on the whole, I think the execution of those good ideas was ridiculously flawed. Yeah, we lead up all season. We lead up over 2 seasons to a villain, and they get chucked in a CGI monster's head's mouth, and then said CGI monster's head doesn't do anything. Like, madness. It was mad. It was wild. It was wild. Yeah. I went from this is a lot to this is messy. Yeah. But again, there is, you know, we always say whenever we review anything, we are reviewing it with our personal view, and we are, you know, therefore we are allowing all of the non balanced things that come with that. And a lot of this review for me comes with a literal grumpiness about the situation. Because as we can go on to, I mean, how many minutes do it? Is that?
Oh, we're gone. It ended while you were speaking, but that's fine. Very quickly, because I know you're about to go on to this topic, I want to give you a stat, Chris, and then I'm going to let you go on this topic that you're very frustrated about. 540 days. That is how long Ncuti was the Doctor, right? 1 year, 5 months, 20 days, right? From the announcement of Ncuti being the Doctor to the giggle was 573 days. So that's nearly a month longer. 1 year, 6 months, and 25 days. So he was announced, but not actually yet the Doctor, for longer than he was the Doctor.
Wow.
Because then from the giggle until the day this aired was 540. So we're talking about a 33-day difference. Yeah, pretty depressing.
Yeah. The only one more screwed by like stats is Paul McGann, who was obviously technically the Doctor for ages, but only had a movie.
Yeah. And eventually a little special, little 10-minute thing was good. He was good in it.
Which is, you know, in the show, the only shot they use now. You notice that it's nothing from the movie. It's basically promo images from the Night of the Doctor.
Yeah.
It's their go-to McGann image.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, look, that side of things. I say this not actually blaming anyone. Like, I don't blame Ncuti for deciding to leave. Mm-hmm. I don't blame Russell and the producers for being like, oh, fuck, what do we do? I don't blame Disney for going, fuck knows how much shit's going to cost us now. I know they spend a lot more money on other properties, but, you know, we need to wait and see. the difficulties of filming abroad or funding something that's abroad. Like, I don't blame any party here, but I'm so gutted that you cannot, despite as Dan indicated earlier, despite all they've done, like wheeling Shooty out for behind the scenes stuff and going, this was always the plan to do this number of seasons, which is worded, as Dan pointed out over WhatsApp to me earlier, worded very cleverly.
Yeah, I've got the exact quote is, it was always the plan to do this amount of seasons, which you could interpret as him saying, I was always planning on doing 2 and leaving, but you could very much read that as it is truthfully, which is, we were originally picked up to do this number of seasons. Whether we got to do more or not was a question of, contracts and expansions, because he was signed on to do 2. He was committed to the 2. But that had obviously the option to extend, which he's chosen not to because of the uncertainty of when they're shooting the next series. And we know this. We know this is fact. He talked about potentially filming season 3 in the summer.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He talked on Graham Norton in a scene in a bit that was cut, but the audiences of Graham Norton have confirmed. He talked about going on to film the 3rd series. There were there were reports and leaks of what the original ending was, and a promo image. So the original ending was the Doctor and Belinda dancing at a party and Susan watching over them, which makes narrative sense. We have built Susan up. It would make sense to do something with the build up of Susan in this episode. And the Disney released a promo image for the episode, which seemingly is the Doctor and Belinda dancing at a party.
Accidentally, by the way, I will say. They didn't even give that out to the press. It was just on one version. It was like Disney Germany or something like that. Disney Plus Germany had the landing, the splash page for this episode, had that image as a background asset. And like someone found it and was like, what's this? And it's just not in the episode. Yeah. You can see it if you Google it.
And it just all... It is leaks and stuff, correlating and in a way that just makes you go, well, that must surely have been what happened. Now, don't get me wrong. I have narrative questions on how they would have done that. I'd be very intrigued to see that, because if you make the whole thing, well, she had to get home for Poppy. And then in the next scene, she's like, presumably got a babysitter and is dancing. Although, arguably there's something quite clever about that, because, she was getting home for a specific time, like she's allowed to go out or whatever.
Yeah, so that night her mother comes back to look after Poppy, and they go out for their party.
Or maybe it's Poppy is there at the party being held by Ruby or Ruby's family.
Or the other option I thought was that the party maybe happened before the reveal. So because obviously it gets to midnight and it's happy May 24th. And obviously it's May 24th at 7:30. So maybe the original structure of the episode was the party happens, then we have the scene with Poppy the next morning that reveals that Poppy was always supposed to be there, that she was always getting back for Poppy.
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah. That's all theories and whatever. We may never know. But either way, all signs point to this was not meant to be the case. And I feel really bad. It's really difficult with the Billie Piper of it all, because actually, if Billie Piper had no connection with the show, I'd be sat here going, I'm glad we've got another female actor, and I'm glad that the actress who was in I Hate Susie. I haven't seen Scoop, but as an actress, she's done a lot of interesting things and been very good in them. So I'm intrigued to see what she would do with the Doctor. But you can't take the Doctor Who of it all out of it. You can't take out the fact that you can't separate the fact that Russell has very recently gone back to his sort of and quote unquote glory days, and you just can't help but go, it feels a little stunt casting, and I fucking hate. Oh my, I hate like not clarifying, or maybe not clarifying, or maybe doing something different where it isn't technically the Doctor or whatever. I hate all that. Like, can we just make it simple, please? We had Tennant come back and who are they? What are they? What's going on here? Why that face? Like, no, if you could, like, I think if it's just, I think that's what's annoyed me about it as well and clouded my feeling on it. If it was just Billie Piper's playing the Doctor chose that face. Cool. Let's go. Is she gonna do a decent season, please, and not just a couple of specials? Like, there are things about the choice which are intriguing, but the way they've shrouded it in mystery, and the fact that
introducing Billie Piper, not including and as the Doctor, not pissed off, but has caused a lot of people to assume she's not properly the Doctor.
Yeah, I just hate that bollocks because, like, we literally set up in the show's canon that the Doctor could choose their face and is sometimes inspired by things. Like, whatever. Like, it winds me up. Like, then I'd be like, okay, well, what's she going to do with it? But it's just got this external bollocks around it, which we've literally just had with the 60th and Tennant. So that makes me not excited by the choice, which is a shame because all of my reasons to not be excited about the choice are nothing to do with Billie Piper's ability as an actor, which is really what should be the only fucking factor into a casting decision like this and my feelings on it. You go.
Yeah, so I think in the wider stuff, I'm pretty bummed to lose Ncuti so soon, but it seems like that's ultimately that falls at Disney's feet, and it's an understandable situation. They didn't want to commit. Ncuti didn't want to wait. They parted ways. This is just what happens. These are the things that happen. In terms of the choice to replace him with Billie, I'm with you. It's very mixed. I should be jumping up and down. That should be an exciting, interesting choice. I should be fist pumping. And there's a part of me that's like, you madman, you actually did it. Like and for those who don't know, this leaked along. And by the way, the guy that leaked that Billie was going to be in this as the next Doctor is the same guy that confirmed before it aired that Midnight was going to be sequelized in this season, and is the same guy that has confirmed that the original ending was this happy May the 24th party, presumably at Unit HQ. The Vlinks apparently was DJing, which I think is very funny. It's very Russell, but it's quite funny. Sometimes I want goofy stuff. Goofy stuff in the right moment, like that, perfect. It's when he does goofy stuff during serious scenes that I'm less fond of Russell's writing. But goofy stuff around that, give me that all day and all night. The Vlinks being the DJ at the party, mwah, yes please. That's just me. That's a chef's kiss. But like, so I'm looking at it like that, where I'm sort of seeing this situation where I'm going like, okay, we have, we know that this has changed. The guy that leaked the other ending also leaked all this stuff. So we knew Billie. A few weeks ago, we'd said on this podcast, there's a name floating around. We won't confirm it here, but if it's true, it's madness, right? And and I meant that. And I should be so excited about it. But like you, Chris, with no confirmed third season on the horizon, no confirmed specials even, no obvious timeline, we're not going to see the fruit of this till, what, 2027? Maybe? And then you're right, maybe it's just going to be a couple of specials, then she'll regenerate and we'll get another Doctor. What are we doing? Like, I would be more excited about this if it was Billie introduced as the Doctor, new season, not coming till 2027, but we confirmed it, it's happening. Hook by hook or by crook, the BBC partially funding it, whatever's happening, or completely funding it now, Disney's out, whatever. It's happening. That would have made me excited. Instead, we're just as in limbo as ever. It doesn't feel controlled. It doesn't feel like the show is in safe hands. The show feels wobblier than ever. So I can't be excited about that choice, which is a shame, because I think Billie Piper's a great choice. And I think that's a really interesting option. And I'm really excited to see what she does with the role. But it's all marred by the reality of it. So
this has to be the most in limbo we've ever been, right?
Yeah.
A season has never ended before, and we've had literally no idea how and when the show is coming back.
Yeah.
In terms of the modern era, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. This is it. This is it. And, look, it's been 20 years and, 6 Doctors, if we're not counting Tennant twice. And, the original show was...
No, we can't. No, he is. He's another entity. He's another Doctor. I think 7 Doctors.
Seven Doctors, 20 years. The original show was 7 Doctors, 25 years. So we are coming up to that point where maybe you go, it's about the same time. Do we take another sort of 10-year break or something here? Let the show cool off, bring it back for a new audience 10 years from now. Maybe that is what's going to happen. But we've done this. So, and look, I'm glad we did this over an open-ended regeneration, because I said to Chris before this even aired, my worst case scenario is open-ended regeneration, because we don't get the satisfaction of getting the surprise regeneration, which is something we've always wanted to see, but we're still losing Shooty. Like, at least if we if we're losing Shooty, at least give us this awesome thing where I got to discover who's playing the Doctor next while watching the show. Like, and obviously the Billie Piper rumor was going around for a long time, but it seemed too wild to even be definitely true. Chris and I spoke on the phone the morning off, and I was like, I don't know what of this is true anymore.
And it was, yeah, which, like I said in a voice note after the episode aired, it does make me laugh that we were discussing all the rumours and going, who knows what's true and what isn't, because we couldn't even conceive a world where it was all true.
Yes.
Because the episode would have been too much if it was all true. Turns out it was all true, and the episode was arguably too much.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that the answer was all of it's true.
Yeah.
But yes, and also, to be fair, it wasn't that mainstream, the rumour of Billie Piper. So, for example, it was a complete surprise to Jess, and I hadn't said anything. The fact that he regenerated, the fact that it was Billie Piper, she didn't know any of that. Whereas usually, Whittaker was announced before, she would have known that going in, and so for a large part of the audience, it probably would have been that. And it's just, exploring of the Doctor Who world has gone up a gear since Russell T Davies took back over. If this has been Whittaker's era, we probably wouldn't have known, because we wouldn't have been looking at it that closely.
Yeah, so you say that, but we were. I guess that's because it was Russell taking back over. It did feel like a lot of people didn't expect Tennant when Whittaker regenerated. They expected Shooty. So, like,
yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
but yeah, same thing. But yeah.
No, that's very fair, actually. Yeah, that is a fair comparison.
But yeah, so we got that at least, because I definitely think an open-ended regeneration, while maybe better for the show in terms of, like, if we do this, we reveal Piper, and then the show just is on ice for 4 or 5 years or more, we're in trouble, because that's like, someone else takes over, what are they going to do? They're going to ignore that. They're going to, if Russell's gone by the time this comes back.
Yeah, someone said that I can't remember who, maybe it was Crispy Pro again, but they were talking, because I was so desperate to hear, like, people talk about this episode after.
It's funny, I didn't do any of that, and I usually would. I've not heard anyone else's thoughts on this episode yet.
Crispy Pro and Mr. TARDIS's, I've checked out, but he pointed out, like, imagine if it's not Russell. Like, if Russell isn't the one to continue this and someone else just has to deal with this, like, it's I don't think that's going to happen. This is a commitment. This is a sign from Russell of that I'm in. Like, whatever else happens, I'm in. It's just the other. I know this is slightly episode, but we haven't even talked. Like, there's so many things we haven't even talked about. The whole Time Lords are sterile thing, and, like, again, as an idea, okay, but what makes me laugh is, like, Russell's not an idiot, right? Russell and comments on his inclusion of themes from The Timeless Child show that he is well aware of the reaction that the fandom has to that kind of thing. Why fucking double down and do more of it in your... It's madness to me.
I don't think that's doubling down on the Timeless Child stuff. I think is this not? I think I sort of see this as Time War stuff, right? Is this not that when the Time Lords were eliminated because they can't exist through time, that effectively sterilized those of them who escaped perishing at that, because Time Lords are eternal. They move through time, so you can't. The only way to destroy them all is with whatever this reality time bomb thing, whatever happened that took out the Time Lords at this point. It's got a bit muddled because they brought them back and then got rid of them again. But, like,
I wasn't saying it was doubling down on the Timeless Child. I was saying it was doubling down on exploring and playing with the lore in a way that is
Right.
clearly going to rile people up.
But we can't never touch the law again, though. I think like
No.
we have to accept that like changing the law is fine and normal. It's just you're going to have to use it for something. At least here it informs the doctor's situation, because the doctor is so excited at the prospect of having a new child in the world because he knows he can't have one. That moment when he's talking to Poppy at the end and he's like, "If I could have a child, I'd want one just like you," or whatever. That's a beautiful moment, and that's
beautiful.
an
Yeah.
acceptable reason to me to make adjustments to the law, because you did something with it. I learned something about this doctor, or the doctor in general.
That was a beautiful scene.
What did we do with the timeless children? Oh, I don't know who I am anymore. All right, you're gonna say that sentence more times across the next 3 episodes? Yeah, all right.
I completely agree with that. By the way, just to save someone putting it in the comments, I don't think the whole thing that they're referring to is the Time War. I think they're referring to the Master.
Right, that's what I was.
I think the Master destroying it.
I've lost track of where we technically left the Time Lords now, because they were gone, then they were brought back, then they were gone again. So I'm assuming we're talking about the second time they were erased from existence, which is the Master's
That's my
story.
read on it, especially the scene where she talks about hiding and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah, that's my read. Which in itself is messy, because I, throughout watching last week and this week, kept forgetting that, and I was like, Time War. Oh no, wait, no, not Time War.
And also that's the other thing. The sterile thing also inspires Rani's. It's not just an element of the Doctor's character we learn something about. It's Rani's motivation for what she's doing. She sees her species. As much as we complain, she wasn't really a scientist in this incarnation, and that's still true even after this episode. The closest we got was her looking at her species and going, "Well, there ain't enough of us left, so we're gonna have to repopulate somehow. I found a way, and be damned the human race and the rest of reality that I'm going to destroy in order to bring forth Omega." Regardless of Omega being a big CGI monster, that plan makes a lot of sense and is informed by the sterility of the Time Lords. However else you want to look at it, that does sort of make sense. I hate the reframing of bi-generation as a form of multiplying, as a form of life finding a way, so to speak, because we have established it's still linear. Russell, are you forgetting what you have written here? The one thing we know factually about bi-generation is it's linear still, because the work that Tennant's doctor puts into his mental health benefits Ncuti. They're not split off 2 paths. They reconverge. They have to, because otherwise Ncuti couldn't benefit from the work Tennant puts in. Therapy out of order. Do you not remember your own dialogue or your own explanation for this? So it can't be a substitute for not being able to give birth anymore. It doesn't make any sense as that. Because at some point the copy has to come back round. So
yeah, I mean, I think we're less likely to see that than get an explanation for why Mrs. Flood can talk to the camera. But I agree with your point. Yeah,
like he's established factually that it's linear by creating that storyline. So this idea that it's an attempt for the to get around, like, oh, bi-generation's kind of happening because it's our biology looking to create more of us or whatever, even though we're sterile. Nonsense, just bollocks, just absolute bullshit. No, thank you. But there's so much left unanswered. I mean, that is a big part of it. But the thing is, I can't even really criticize that, because some of the stuff left unanswered was clearly being tackled with in season 3. And while I have lost faith in Russell's ability to satisfyingly answer questions, he often does answer the questions eventually. The boss. We were ultimately going to meet who the boss was, right? I don't know if we were ever going to come back to Rogue, but we were going to come back to Susan. So then what you're left with...
I think we still might come back to Susan and the boss and all of that sort of stuff, because the boss line in particular, you could have easily cut that from this episode if you wanted to.
Right.
So I suspect we will come back to
if we get more
potentially
show.
Susan. Well, yeah, of course.
That's
a caveat for all of it.
Yeah. I assume that is ultimately his plan, but the scripts he already had together for season 3, which he talked about in Doctor Who magazine, we talked about this earlier in the season, presumably started covering some of that stuff. So it's hard for me to know what to be mad at and what not to be. But I will say, Mrs. Flood breaking the fourth wall, I think, was still to be addressed. There's a reason we kept Mrs. Flood alive. It's not a coincidence.
Hopefully.
As you said, the boss was referenced here. If we weren't coming back to that, they'd have cut that. No problem. It was a very quick line. Susan cut from this episode, but presumably again, maybe even there's a lot of people who think Susan is the boss, and that the time hotel is hers, which makes sense. She's a time lady, and because who's the boss? The foreman, Susan Foreman. I get it. But then the problem with Russell's writing as well, though, is then there is stuff left in the air that we just know we won't ever get back to. Because we just know that it's left untouched because it's just messy Russell writing, not because he plans to come back to it. And I've started losing faith in some of his ability to come back to this stuff. Like Poppy's link to Space Babies. Did we cover that? We explaining that? We met Poppy in space.
Yeah, I think there was a line about how the Poppy was created from a combination of his memories and her memories, and that made her real.
That's not true, though. We know that's not true. She always existed.
Of course, she was always existed, but she was Belinda's. Yeah, I don't know then.
That's my point. No, it's so messy. I've seen people saying, "What's the deal with Poppy's link to Space Babies?" Like it's a remaining thread, and I'm like, we're not coming back to that. And that's what I really hate. When people put these lists together, they mix up all sorts of stuff that's either already closed, but they just want more of, stuff that is still to be addressed, and deliberately so, which both are fine. Like it's okay for you to want more of a thing that's closed. We'll talk about Rogue in a second. But I think it's perfectly okay for Russell to leave some threads deliberately open, like the boss, like Susan. And the plan wasn't for Susan to be completely left open anyway. The plan was for Susan to appear in this, to sort of reinforce that. We didn't find a space for that in the end, but there you go. But things like Mrs. Flood's fourth wall breaking, I don't know for sure we're coming back to that. Poppy's link to Space Babies, I do not know we're coming back. I'm sure we're not coming back to that. You know, this stuff about Time Lords being sterile, is that coming back? Probably not. You know, there's so many weird little bits and bobs that just get left as threads on the floor that Russell never bothers to pick up again. And that is very frustrating because then people mix them in with real things he's deliberately left open and go, look at this huge list of stuff unanswered. And it's like, yeah. And that's one of the things that leads to these finales feeling unsatisfying. He talks about bringing everything together and he never satisfyingly does that. So, yeah, that part of this episode was bad. In my opinion, real bad. Should we talk about Rogue? Do we have any thoughts on Rogue? They brought him back last week for all of 30 seconds to help the Doctor guide the Doctor back to the truth, but we had a little reference to him this week too.
Yeah, I mean, it falls in line with what you've just said. It would take some convincing to convince me that there wasn't, and it's another reason why I'm like, clearly this wasn't the plan. I would struggle to see anyone convincing me that there wasn't meant to be a third series with Ncuti and Rogue wasn't going to be part of that and have a story within that.
Yeah, that's my feeling.
And I think that is another story because it would be quite difficult, I would argue, to continue that story with another Doctor. I think that would be too much of a challenge, and that's a shame. I liked that character. I liked that story. I would have liked to have seen where that went, and I think Rogue is another victim in this victimless crime. Well, not victimless. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen more Rogue, and I don't think we will now. Or if we do, it certainly won't be whatever was planned when it was Ncuti's Doctor.
Yeah. This is the kind of, actually, now I'm thinking about it, like, this is the worst case scenario of the Disney deal. When people were worried about the Disney deal, this is the thing we should have been worried about. Not that they would cancel the show, because I don't think you're ever going to completely be able to cancel Doctor Who. The BBC, Padwolf, a combination of groups will eventually make this happen again. But when you're in the middle of a season and with storylines in the air and you're not at the end of an era yet, that's the real danger. You know what I mean? And maybe that's actually on Russell. Maybe Russell should have known that he had 2 seasons initially and not to leave too much to chance for that third. Maybe he should have used this season to tie up a lot of those knots, knowing that while he's hoping for a third season, that's not a guarantee. There's nothing in a contract that says a third season. I should make sure as much as possible is wrapped up in the 2 seasons I have got.
Yeah, agreed.
because maybe some element is just we need to put the blame thoroughly at Russell's feet. So yeah, in general, Ncuti's era has been really interesting. It's really, really high number of great episodes. Overall, the consistency has been there, I would say. Like, it's a short era, but like, I would say there's a lot more hits than misses in terms of just individual episodes. Is that good? Is that bad? If we were Rotten Tomatoesing it, this has definitely been very high quality. The problem has been that more often than not, it's not living up to the sum of its parts. The ideas are never coming together. The overarching ideas are never coming together in a satisfying way. The character arcs aren't always coming together in a satisfying way. Belinda spent half the season going, but Doctor, I want to get back home. And then they did nothing with that in the episodes. It very rarely informed her choices in the episodes. It never made her more reluctant or more careful. And I know we were sort of hiding a mystery with that, but I think that we could have gotten away with that and actually had it inform her character more. But we were too busy going, wee! As we went on all these adventures, that we sort of didn't look at the bigger picture, and that's been a problem throughout this entire era. So while I like this finale on balance more than last year's, I think both finales ultimately probably failed to do the thing a finale should do. So maybe it was entertaining as an episode, but as an actual wrap up to a season of television, it was bad. So it succeeded in entertaining me for the hour and 7 minutes it existed, but it failed to be a good finale for this series. I think that's where I land, if we're summarising. How about you?
I think I'd stand by what I said earlier. I think there were a number of great ideas that they weren't explored properly. And there are moments that I would rank as some of the best of this era. The scene where Poppy disappears, for example, I thought was just haunting. I really love Whittaker's scene. I thought that was done really well. So there are, like I say, but that is like you just said, that's not substance. That is, I might go, I'm gonna rewatch Whittaker's scene on YouTube, or I'm gonna look at that scene again.
She was so good.
Yeah, brilliant. And I love the Yaz line again. I thought it was so perfectly done. So yeah, but going back and watching moments on YouTube does not make a well constructed and structured episode. And that is a flaw.
That is fair, because also my plan was to completely rewatch the episode top to bottom before we did this, and I didn't find the time, and instead I did just pick 4 or 5 scenes. And to be fair, some of them were from the first half. Like there were certain scenes I wanted to rewatch just to sort of get my head round. And then I did pretty much, I think I watched the last 15-20 minutes as a whole, to be honest. But yeah, I would agree with that. Oh, and very quickly, for anyone wondering, I'd said earlier I'd clarify which parts I thought were reshoots. I think there's 3 reshoot sections. Interior TARDIS stuff, which includes Poppy and the cop vanishing, 13 appearing, and the regeneration itself. I think there's 1 sequence at Unit HQ that was part of the reshoots, which is the one where no one believes Ruby that Poppy vanished. And specifically the stuff in the garden between 15 and Belle, which is the only scenes from him and Belle in that section of the episode that references the regeneration. Once he goes inside, it just looks like it's kind of weird. He shows up, talks to her in the garden, and then they go into the interior, and then they go back out to the garden, and it feels like he bookended that scene with those 2 moments in order to through line the regeneration, which is clever. And the regeneration stuff is not covered at all in the actual scene in the living room, which is why I believe that scene is part of the original ending of the episode. But yeah, what do we think of Ncuti's like final words and stuff? Like, it has been a joy. We thumbs up to that?
I mean, who would have predicted joy to the world being so prominent in this in this finale?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is one thing. I think he has been an absolute joy. I actually don't. I quite like those last words. I thought because I think that's what this Doctor has been, and that was actually the promise of this Doctor in the Giggle. He'd healed and he was just going to have fun. Racing across the universe and
zapping people and electrocuting and torturing them. What?
Well, yes, yeah. That's absolutely. That is, he's not just done that, because he also, has had people being racist to him. But on the whole, he's got, as Jodie said, or 13 said, he's got an amazing smile, and I'm glad we ended on that beaming of positivity. It wouldn't have felt right for his doctor to be very, I don't want to go. I think his doctor saying it's been an absolute joy and grinning broadly fits his doctor in the main. Despite how his heart is now cold, which is an idea we did not go back to, although I thought we would. Like when he's like, we're going into battle, Ruby goes, I don't know if I just misheard this, I'd need to rewatch it, but I thought I heard Ruby go, battle? As if to be, and I was like, "Oh shit, we are going to explore that." And is that Ruby going? Hold on, the doctor I know wouldn't go into battle. Yeah. What's going on here? But dropped. We didn't loop back round to that. Yeah. So
he has been stunning though, and like even the delivery of his line earlier in this episode when he says like, "I like this face," like the resignation, like. Passion he uses to deliver that is just incredible. Like it's remarkable, and like the line when he's the big speech that leads up to him saying the last of the Time Lords before he gets in the TARDIS to go save Poppy is incredible. He's so good in this episode, and it's again every time he's amazing on screen, which is most of the time. Your heart aches knowing that where this is all going, which is that we're going to have him for all too short an amount of time. Yeah, really tragic, but what a doctor! Like, just if we're taking a moment to eulogize, like one of the best.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal, and I think I just wish we had more.
Yeah,
I wish we had so much more with him, and I wish we had a chance to have more episodes like not just Dot and Bubble for the way it handled its themes, but just that quality. I wish we had more of that as well for those things, but I don't necessarily. I'm not saying I want a season of Dot and Bubbles. I'm just saying, that quality in episode, and Lux as well. Let's use Lux too. I wish we just had the opportunity to have more Luxes and more Dot and Bubbles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. So with all that said, everyone, look, this podcast was messy, as was the episode. I think
that's fine.
Podcast imitates life. Like podcast is imitating the thing it's reviewing. The structure of that has fallen into this. But yeah, we thank everyone very much for listening and to sticking with us for the entire season, particularly those of you who have been commenting. Obviously, we always appreciate hearing feedback, even if we don't always get time to reply to it on the podcast or even just the thing. We do appreciate the comments we've got. It's been a weird one to do it in this format, but it was this or not at all.
Who knows when we'll be back, and so therefore keep an eye on the main Nothing But Static show, because when there's news on when we'll be back or news of what's happening, we will talk about it then.
Yeah. So if there's Doctor Who rumblings, then you can, if you check out Nothing But Static, you will no doubt we'll be covering it on there. But yeah, thanks everyone very much for listening, especially if you've listened to all of these. God bless you, especially because this one's ended up being like just shy of an hour. But yeah, thanks everyone very much, and we will. I assume we'll see you in the future, or we'll regenerate into much more famous and attractive people, and then they can do the podcast in our place.
Well, there you go.
And they'll probably actually be able to contain their reviews to 20 minutes.
I was wrong. There is something less likely than Mrs. Flood talking to the fourth wall being addressed. Talking to the audience.
Bye.